let's see here. Yeah.
One follow-up from the last lecture, please. For the hot spots in the peacocks, was that just for where the greater number of females were located, or
Yeah.
also the number of food availability?
Well, it's the availability. The reason that the females are more common there is because there's.
So it's a combination of both.
Well, I think it's precisely because of females. But the reason that the females there is because that's where the food is delivered. Okay. So, the hot spot idea is males put their display links at the places where the females are going to be. A lot of, I don't know, food, resources, a lot of, I don't know, predator-free space, maybe, or something like that. You can imagine, I guess you could imagine a variety of possibilities, but that's kind of cool. Yeah. So we're going to keep talking about sort of the subject we ended with last time, which is the alternative mating strategies. And just to kind of review here, we talked about hook-nosed and jacks. We'll refer to that in a little bit later. And we had the first way that you can end up with a sort of alternative strategies is when somebody is making the best of a bad situation. So they have to take an alternative tactic, mating tactic, in order to actually get any reproductive success at all. That's probably what's going on with the jacks and hook noses. When people have looked as much as they can, they find that pretty much always the hook noses do better than the jacks. Okay. But, the jacks are getting some reproductive success, even though it's maybe not as much as what's going on with the hook nose. And we talked about frequency dependence, where it isn't that one is always better than the other, but they actually have their relative value of a particular strategy depends on the frequency of individuals performing those strategies. It's frequency dependent. Okay. A third sort of way of talking about an alternative strategy, a third way in which these can occur, is something that's different. So on the y-axis here, we're still measuring reproductive success, okay? But instead of frequency of somebody, we're measuring the condition of the males. And we could just think of it as basically from good to bad. A lot of times this is age, so young males are in good condition, and as time goes on, they just wear out and get worse. So they have lower condition. Okay. In that sort of a situation, you might imagine that as a territorial male is in good condition, has high reproductive success, and as it drops in terms of its condition, its reproductive success goes down. As a satellite male, though, you have the same sort of pattern. It looks a little bit more like the situation where we had frequency dependence, but here we've got the reproductive success of the satellite declines as its condition decreases, but it doesn't decline as rapidly. Okay. When everybody's in good condition, it's better to be a territorial male, but potentially if everybody's in bad condition, it might be better to be a satellite. Okay. In that case, as an individual gets worse and worse condition, it might very well be advantageous if an individual could switch strategies. It's better to be a territorial male here. At this point, now it should switch to become a satellite male. And these are referred to as condition-dependent alternative strategies, because they depend on the condition of the male. And there's probably some sort of, critical value here of condition that links the switch between territorial and satellite strategies. This is something that's probably going on here in horseshoe crabs. You know horseshoe crabs? Ever seen a horseshoe crab out coming up onto the beach, laying eggs? This is a female, large individual. She's a female, another large female over here. And these smaller guys are all males. Okay. And there are males that attach to the tail of the horseshoe crabs called Tesla. And they attach to it, they grab onto that, and that's approximately where the female will be laying eggs. And they have good access to the female at that point. They're sort of the territorial strategy in this case. Okay, they get good access to males, or to the female's tail. These other males, yeah, I'm sorry.
What do they attach to?
The tail.
The females do?
Yeah. They're grabbed onto it. The male, these guys, you see they're a little darker, actually conspicuously darker. The lighter colored males are younger males. And as they age, that sort of carapace just gets abraded and worn a bit, and they get darker. And you can see that the darker, older, poorer conditioned males are not the ones that are attached to the female. Okay, they're the satellites in this case. Okay, and as they, start out, these are the attached males, which are like the territorial, the previous one. Attached males, they are attached when they're in good condition, and as they get older and older and poorer condition, they switch over and become satellite males. They become the males that are sort of off to the side with lower reproductive success. But, more able to be a good satellite than a male who's in poor condition can be a territorial attached male. Okay. That make sense? So you've got these three ways. Best of a bad situation, frequency dependent, or condition dependent strategies. There's one last thing I want to talk about because it's kind of cool and it involves orangutans, which is kind of interesting organism. You may know, these are male orangutans. They have these big flanges on the side of their heads. These are actually called flanged males because these are males as well. These are adult males. The flanged males they're the big, conspicuous, big body, long hair, flanges, they have throat pouches, and they make calls and so on. These guys are adult males. And orangutans, they reach adulthood at about mid-teens. Okay, they're adult males, perfectly sexually mature. They just don't have any of those secondary sexual characteristics that the flanged males have. And, this adult male may stay an unflanged male for 20 years, maybe all of its life. Never becomes a flanged male. Never has these secondary sexual characteristics. Okay. They call it bimaturism. It means there's two mature forms. Okay, and this is unique among mammals, I think, that there are these two kinds of sort of morphologies of males, but they represent also two different kinds of mating types. Let me pull up this. The flanged males are solitary. They are territorial. They're aggressive to other flanged males. They don't permit, they're not happy with other flanged males coming into their territory. They have all of these secondary sexual characteristics. They're very attractive to females. They make these long calls which attract females and females hang around with them and mate. They're not very aggressive towards unflanged males. territories. They don't make these long calls. They're not really all that attractive to females, but they actually mate with females. And I don't know, maybe you've heard about the sort of forced copulations that orangutans engage in. It's mostly these guys, the unflanched males, intercept females who are in estrus and probably approaching one of the flanged males, and they forcibly copulate.
The display shows that they're both common fish, is that right?
Yeah, they are. They're actually, so the aggressive ones are these guys, but they're only aggressive to flanged males. Everybody else is not so aggressive.
Oh, so they're only aggressive towards each other.
The flanged males, right, yeah.
Flanked are aggressive towards others.
Yeah, they're highly intolerant to other flanged males.
Oh.
They really, they don't like them.
And which ones are attracted to females? The flanked.
Okay, yes.
Is this, or is this another thing that changed?
So this is why it doesn't fit into one of those categories that I just talked about neatly, but it's interesting because it's possible for these unflanged males to develop into a flanged male. Okay, you can't go the other way. Once you're a flanged male, you're a flanged male. Okay. But there are circumstances when an unflanged male can convert to being a flanged male. And it commonly happens when the local flanged male dies. Okay? He dies, and now suddenly, not suddenly, but actually pretty quickly, over a couple months, the unflanged male develops all of those secondary sexual characteristics, the flanges and the big body size and the throat pouches and behavioral changes, okay? And then he becomes a flanged male and stays there. So it's not really, it's maybe it's frequency dependent because as long as there's one flanged male, he won't become a flanged male. So I don't know, the frequency goes from 1 to 0 when that flanged male dies, then you can become a flanged. The unflanged male can convert to a flanged male. Not clear what the mechanism is here. Nobody really knows. It's it sounds like some sort of maybe, I don't know, hormonal suppression somehow of the behavioral switch to flanginess. Unsure. But it's cool, and it's a very sort of characteristic activity that is of a close relative that we don't have anything remotely like. All right. Now those are basically looking at two different meals, or two different meal strategies, and in all of these cases you have territorial, satellite, something like that, in various kinds of ways. But there are situations in which there is more than one meal strategy.
A male bluegill sunfish swimming in a lake in North America seems big, strong, and confident enough to take on any rivals. He's 8 years old, and he too is ready to breed. He hollows out a shallow nest by fanning his tail. Then he sets about persuading one of the females in the shoals swimming nearby to come down and join him. He's offering both a nest and his parental services. One arrives. Although she is considerably smaller than he is, she is full grown, and he chivies her into his nest to lay. She catches his mood from his distended fins and circling dance. Things are going well. But lurking in the weeds is a tiny 2-year-old male. He will never build a nest or woo a female, but he's a serious rival nonetheless. As soon as the female lays, he darts in and delivers a jet of sperm. Back he comes and adds another squirt before he's finally chased off. continues his dance. The more eggs that are laid in it, the better. The little sneak retires to the weeds. Now the big male seems to have been joined by a second female. Not so. The new one, in the middle, is an older sneaking male, who dances so like a female that the big male doesn't notice the difference. The nest owner continues to chase away other males, leaving the female impersonator with the real female unhurriedly fertilizing her eggs. Eventually, the big male is left in sole charge of the nursery. He labours away, fanning the eggs to keep a current of oxygen-rich water flowing over them. And he's a devoted father, steadfastly standing guard over the fry when they hatch. With him hovering above them, they're safe from most predators. But the fact is that 2/3 of them are probably not his.
So we got a three-party situation here.
What's the
Uh,
word this fish?
This is the bluegill sunfish. You know, you have the territorial males, you have the satellite male sneakers, and then you get the female mimics. Astonishingly, this sort of pattern has evolved repeatedly. This is a marine isopod called Paracersius stolta. These are they have three forms of males, alpha, beta, and gamma. And the females are basically look just like beta here. They live in sponges, okay, and sponges are nice places for things to live in because they have a good cavity. So the males sort of guard a sponge, okay, and they entice females to come in and lay eggs in their sponge. And they defend those sponges, those sponge cavities from, any other alpha form males. Okay. There are these guys, which are the little sneakers. They're equivalent to the same sort of strategy, the sneakers that we've been talking about. They're little tiny males. They're really rapidly moving. The alpha males are very aggressive towards the gamma males. Like you saw with the bluegills, they chase them away if possible. They don't, the gammas can get into little nooks and crannies in the sponge, and so they can escape from the bigger alphas. But they're always there trying to mate with females. So in crustaceans, mating has to happen at the time of molting. So when a female is ready to mate and molt, okay, alpha male grabs her and kind of rides around with her for a while. But he will do the same thing with one of the beta males, who are female mimics, as far as they can tell. They can't tell the difference between them. Okay. And that gives the beta males, again, access to the females, sort of a mating strategy. Okay. So this three-part strategy. And, this sort of complex alpha, beta, gamma strategy has evolved repeatedly. In the case of, I wanted to say this, in the case of these three strategies, they are, in fact, determined genetically. Okay, there are genes that cause you to become alpha or beta or gamma. And that's actually sort of a hard thing to do because that means that you have to have equal fitnesses of those alleles, those traits that make you alpha, beta, or gamma. But as it turns out in Paracersius stolta, that's the case. There's equal reproductive success for the alpha, the beta, and the gamma forms of the traits. This sort of tripartite mating strategy among males is not just in the bluegill sunfish or some other fish, or these isopods, marine isopods, but there's birds that do this. There's a bird called the ruff that does this. There are some cuttlefish that do this. And so it's actually something that apparently is a sort of a strategy which has repeatedly evolved in vastly unrelated organisms, and which must be sort of fairly stable and sort of a valuable way to do things. There's one more instance of this, and is this the one that you were talking about in evolution? The side-blotched lizards? Or did you talk about bluegills?
The bluegills. And the sneaker,
So this is side-blotched lizards. These are lizards of the basically western North America. They have three forms of males. There's orange, blue, and yellow. You can see it a little bit better from the below the throat. Okay. And these three sorts of males coexist in a particular population. The orange males are polygynous. They have a polygynous breeding system. Males are large. They actually defend large territories that have multiple female territories within them. Okay. Blue males are monogamous. Okay, and they have smaller territories and they defend a single female. Okay. The yellow ones are the sneaker morph. Okay. Because the blue form of the monogamous form actually guards their females closely, while the orange form, which has this large territory with multiple females in it, the yellow sneakers usually steal populations from the females that are associated with the orange males. Okay. So these can sort of cheat this. The big orange ones lose fitness to the sneakers, but they actually can sort of steal the territories of the monogamous males, okay, and then actually get more females. The monogamous can actually defend against those sneakers, okay, and so sometimes this has been referred to as a sort of rock, paper, scissors situation where, you know, orange can beat blue, the polygynous beats the monogamous. The blue can beat the yellow because it can defend its female, blue males can defend it against sneaking by the yellow parasites. And the yellow ones can sneak populations from the polygynous males. This is different from the other sort of three-part situation because you don't have, I mean, these look a little more female-like, but there's no, the sneakers are female-like as opposed to there being a territorial, a sneaker, and a female mimic side. Okay. So it's doing it in a different way, but there's also three sort of mating strategies involved. Okay. Questions about that? Mating stuff? Okay. I will point out that there already there have been at least one person who has already received the maximum number of points possible from these 5 minutes. Several others are nearing that maximum. So, good for you. All right. These have names on them. I feel like a whole. You get one? Try to work around the wet part. Okay. You guys got them. You guys got them. You guys got them. Thanks. All right. Huh? Pick one of those. All right, A, B, C, or D, and hand them in, please. And please put your name on them. And a little toggle with that last time we did this. Who do I not have? All right. So, A? You picked A? Okay. B. C. D? Oh, yeah. Red lights, hedgehogs. What do I mean though? Bucket full of baby sloths?
Sloths are moldy.
They're what?
Sloths are moldy and grow algae on them.
Well, so I see we have algae prejudice here. Yeah, they're cool. They have algae and mold growing. All right, anyway.
Which of those would you choose?
What's that?
Which of those would you choose?
What would I choose? I like the bucket of sloths. Honestly. Because I mean a baby sloth. Oh. Still, I see the appeal of the hedgehog. It's got that face.
Yeah, it's a nice haircut.
Is C a lemur? Is that a lemur?
You know, I think that's a slow horse,
Oh.
but yeah, kind of same sort of thing. Okay. So, you know, we have been talking about alternative mating systems, okay? And we're talking about, you know, mostly how things, like males are doing things differently. Different males are doing things differently. This actually fits in to the next topic, which is, I want to talk about sex-changing organisms. Instead of the sort of strategy being, you know, two different things that males are doing, the strategy is going to be, am I going to be a male or am I going to be a female? Okay. And so that's what this is going to be. And this, the first thing we're going to talk about here is the blue-headed wrasse, which is, they're called blue-headed wrasses because, you know, these bright colored fish have blue heads. You know. These are the females, the males. Okay. But let's see how that system works.
These fish, blue-headed wrasse on the reefs of the Bahamas, are also bisexual, but not simultaneously. The big blue-headed one is a male, the smaller one a female. A number of females visit a spawning site controlled by an individual male. As each lays her eggs, he fertilizes them. So he passes on his genes to far more young than an individual female does. In the competition to continue the line, it's better for a wrasse to be a big male than a female. And when a male dies, the biggest female claims his throne. Within 2 weeks, she develops a blue head, produces sperm, and becomes the parent of more babies than if she had remained a she. But most animals don't have this option. They're stuck with the sex they're born
with, I guess. So, sort of, sex-changing organisms are actually pretty widespread among animals. And one of the, just as you're kind of like listening to this, hopefully you sort of like notice that the males, in this case, being bigger, brightly colored, attracting multiple females, are polygynous. They're attracting multiple mates. And that's going to figure in things as we sort of look at this. The regulation of males and females in these species in this species at least, is really remarkable. First of all, the males, which are, this is EP males, means terminal phase males, the males as they end up. They're bigger, okay, than females. Okay, so females are smaller, they get bigger. They've done experiments where you go to a reef and you take out a certain number of males. Okay, you just collect them, with a net. Okay, and then you ask how many of the females changed into males. Okay, so you take out 10 males, how many females could change into males? If it's exactly the same number that you remove, it's that dotted line, and it's really close. So if 5 males are taken out, 5 females convert to males. 10 males are taken out, 10 females convert. You take out 1, only 1 converts. Okay. So there's a certain, a regulation of the number of these terminal phase mates. This happens in a number of fish. Fish, not commonly, but there's a lot of examples of fish changing sexes as they change size. This is a parrotfish. This is the male, sort of more brightly colored. Okay, and the males are the hollow bars here, much larger than the females, which are, smaller. Okay. Now, how do we think about how this works? Okay. This is something that's called the size advantage hypothesis. Okay. And you'll see why this is actually associated with these condition-dependent strategies. Okay. So it's a common thing in fish that the bigger the female fish is, the more eggs she lays. That's widespread thing. And here we're looking at the fertility of females are these blue lines. Okay, the bigger they get, the more eggs they can lay. Okay. If the situation for males is different from the situation for females, okay, that if you're a male, a small male, you really don't have very high fertility, but if you get to larger and larger body sizes, and particularly large enough body sizes to mate with a large number of females, your fertility will increase. Okay? In that case, and if you have the capacity to change sex, the thing that you would do, the best thing you would do is be a female with a small body size, and then when you get to this critical value here, change sex and become a male. Okay? So it would favor sex changing. Okay. This is a particular type of sex changing called photogeny, and that just means first females. Because the idea here is that as the fish grows, it is first a female, and then it's a male. Okay? In the opposite circumstance, we still have females increasing their reproduction, their fertility, as they has, it's the same curve over here as over here. But what if the males have relatively higher fertility when they're small? And although they're increasing, it's increasing a little bit and not nearly as much as what is happening with the females. And so eventually the females get to be more productive as they grow larger. Okay. In this case, first thing you would do is be a male. And then if you have the capacity to change sexes, you switch to being a female. And this is called protandry, which means first male. So we would expect that there may be different kinds of sex changing, male to female or female to male. In fact, there are. These are some protandrous fish. This is a Sargo green and a black purdy. They're unlike the situations that we saw with the blue-headed wrasse and maybe that parrotfish, where the males were really brightly colored. Here, where the males have, these large males have great reproductive success, you might expect the sorts of, sexual selection favoring bright colors that would attract females and so on, that we've seen many times before. Out here, the males are not doing much, and the females are just getting bigger. So they're not nearly as brightly colored in this sort of, gaudy species. They tend to be for protandrous fish. So that's interesting. Okay, so sex changing. Now, mostly, species that sex change do it once. They go from male to female to female to male. It doesn't always happen this way. This is a species called coral goby, where it can actually change from female to male and back to female multiple times. So it can go and have multiple sex changes throughout its life. In the case of the anemone fish, it's a little less determined by size. It's determined by the presence or absence of the opposite sex. So an anemone fish develops into whatever sex is absent. Okay. If Nemo's mom dies, Nemo turns into a female, honestly, is what would happen, okay, in this case. Or if Nemo's dad died, Nemo would turn into a male. Okay, so there's different ways in which this actually operates. Let's think about kind of a very simple but really wide-reaching prediction that we can make with these sex-changing organisms. We know that this is true. Total reproduction through females is equal to the total reproduction through males. Okay? Because
One mom, one dad.
everybody's got a mom and a dad. Okay. Now, we're going to say that the average reproduction of a female is this, and the average reproduction of a male with a male is that. The number of females is this, and the number of males is that. Therefore, just to restate this thing at the top, the total reproduction through females is the average reproduction times the total number, and that has to equal the average reproduction of males times the total number of males. That makes sense to everybody? Because that's the total number of times that that fathering happens, and this is the total number of times that mothering happens. Okay. Fair enough? Okay. Next thing. Sex change. If we went back to thinking about the protogynous situation, sex change happens when those two fertility curves cross when the reproduction of a female equals the reproduction of a male. Okay. And you change to a male when this is greater than that. When the fertility of males is greater than the fertility of females. And that's why you change to a male. Okay? If this is true, and this is true, then this has to be true. The number of females has to be greater than the number of males. If there's if this number is greater than that number, then this number has to be greater than that number for them to be equal. Okay. That is to say that there are more females than there are males. We don't have a 1-to-1 sex ratio. You have to have more females than males. And in fact, what it is saying is that the first sex, they will be overrepresented, because then we change to females when the F is greater than the N. The first sex is overrepresented. There's more females than males when there's protogeny. And there's more males than females when there's protandry. Okay? That makes sense. And this is a consequence of everybody's got one mom and one dad. Okay? Here's some data that kind of go after that question. This is a protogynous species, and in a protogynous species, there are first females. Okay? And that means we would expect there to be more females than males. Right? And here we're looking at the sex ratio. 50-50 is equal numbers of males and females. The way they graph it is more males up here, more females down here. And you can see that there's more females when the females are the first sex. Okay. And in protandry, 50-50 is right here. And in those species, there are more males than there are females. I think that's kind of cool. Out of a sort of observation of the sex advantage or the size advantage hypothesis and recognizing that everybody's got one mom and one dad, it allows you to predict something about sex ratios and what the average sort of numbers of males and females there are in a population. You can do this with single parent species as well. These are close relatives. I'm not 100% sure what all of these are. I think one of them is a kind of worm, an animal worm that's sex. There's a sort of a crustacean or two, a group of crustaceans or two in the group here. And then I think one of them is sort of Helios fishes. Okay, and what we're seeing here is that when you compare closely related species, one of which is protandrous and one of which is protogynous, the protandrous species have more males, and the protogynous species have more females. It's not a characteristic of just, I don't know, fish. It's a characteristic of basically all organs. Bisexual and change sex. Okay? Yes, it does. So it's another, and this should remind you a lot of that size advantage hypothesis should remind you a lot of condition dependence. You know, it's better to be one strategy until you get to the point where the other strategy is better. So there you change sex instead of changing from, I don't know, territorial to sneaker or something like that. Okay. We're going to leave mating behind here a little bit. Mating strategies. We're going on parental care. We've had a lot of mate choice and mating, we've had a lot of mating systems, and now we got babies, and now we're engaged in parental care, I suppose. Parental care is, I guess, something that we have an intuitive and really probably pretty accurate notion of what it is. You know, it's things that parents do to increase the survival of their young, their offspring. Okay? It might be, if you're a bird, incubating those eggs. Okay? Bringing food back to the babies in the nest. If you're a mammal, it could be lactating. Okay? Actually, you could probably include gestation, because that action of growing a sort of egg within your body is something that increases the survival of your offspring. Okay. It could be, defending them from predators, building that nest, digging out that burrow or den, something like that. It could be for birds, maybe the production of that large yolk-filled egg. Okay, that's an indication of the sort of an investment that a parent is making that increases the survival of the young. Okay. And it works. I mean, parental care does actually increase the survival of offspring. Here's an example. This is a great tip. These are the survival of baby juvenile great tits. What happens is, in this well-studied species, is they band the little baby birds and put leg bands on the birds when they get to a certain, age, and then they measure them at a particular age. I guess it's day 15. Okay, they measure their weight, and they measure the length of the tarsus, which is this part of the leg. Okay. And then they release them, and they look at whether or not they recover them again in the future, the next year. So it's the percent that it recovers. Okay. And just at the end of parental care in the nest, they're measuring the size of these chicks. Those that are bigger have received more parental care than those that are smaller. Okay, and there's a greater chance that those bigger chicks will actually survive to be captured next year. Okay, so there's survival increases with the size of the bird, the size of the baby bird. Okay, same thing for this bird, Manx chirrut. Time that the bird is finished with parental care, the baby is finished with parental care. They're a lot bigger, so they're 750 grams for the maximum. So we're looking at the percent recapture as a function of body weight of the chicks. Small chicks just don't survive as well as large chicks. And that's survival. And the reason that they're big is because mom and dad have got more food. Now, one thing that is really important, and it's maybe it's like a really central unifying notion here in parental care, is that parental care acts to increase the survival of the young. Okay? But the parents are performing parental care to increase the survival of their young, but for their own evolutionary purposes. Increasing the survival of their young is good for the parents. I mean, it's good for the offspring too. But the reason that organisms engage in parental care is because it increases their fitness. It increases their fitness because it increases the survival of their young. But the focus that we should have on parental care, because it will be incredibly useful as we go forward, is thinking about parents doing this for themselves. started off in the class talking about, I don't know, navigation where, bats are finding insects with sonar. And so we have one organism basically doing things, interacting with this environment. We shifted later on to talking about how predation, foraging, and predator avoidance were happening. So you actually had two individuals. You had a predator and a prey interacting with one another, and the interactions are pretty straightforward. Predators want prey. Prey don't want to become prey. Okay. So it's very, in a sense, the way that the interactions take place is pretty straightforward. You get into mating, okay, and we saw this increase in complexity when we got into mating, where we had males and females. And you might think, well, okay, both males and females want to mate, but it's not like that. Remember, males may want to mate, but females may not want to mate with that male. Okay? Female behavior is a function of what is best for the female. Male behavior is a function of what is best for the male. Okay? There's conflicts of interest between males and females about who mates and how many times and that sort of thing. Okay, so it's not just a single evolutionary point of view. Males and females might have different evolutionary points of view. When we get into parental care, the complexity just goes up further. Okay? Parents may have a different evolutionary point of view than the offspring. Offspring may want parental care. Parents may or may not want to give more parental care to those offspring. Males and females might differ in their opinion about who ought to give parental care. Males may want the females to give parental care. Females may want the males to give parental care. Maybe they both cooperate and say, it's good for both of us to give parental care. Okay? But there is a complex sort of interaction between them. Among the offspring, there can be competition among siblings. Siblings don't necessarily want all of the resources, all of the parental care distributed evenly to everybody. They may want more of it for themselves. Okay. So all of those sorts of complex sort of inter-individual interactions emerge when we're talking about parental care. Okay? So that makes it an interesting and more complex sort of situation that we're going to talk about. Parental care works, but that doesn't mean that it's as simple as more parental care is the kind of behavior that we're going to expect in all situations. Parental care can be costly for parents. Oops. I guess examples of parental care. I don't know what this is here for. Probably should have had this up when I was talking. Parental care can be costly. This is a bird called willowtit. It's relative large chickadee. And what we're looking at here is each of these dots represents what's happening in a population of these willowtits in a particular year. In some years, there are very few offspring per adult. What is that, 1 1/3 or something like that? Other years, there's more. There's 3 1/2 offspring per adult. Okay. There's a lot more individuals who are babies who are babies in some years than other years. And this actually corresponds very nicely to the post-breeding parental survival. This is how, what's the fraction of adults, of parents, that survive to the next year. Okay? When there are few offspring produced in this year, there's greater survival of parents to the next year. If there are more offspring produced this year, there's less survival of parents the next year. Okay, so the parents must always be making decisions about how much do I want to invest in offspring this year? Okay. if it's going to cost me something for future reproduction, because I won't survive for the next year. Investment in offspring might reduce the parent's survival, the cost of reproduction here. Yeah.
Is this limited to reptiles or other egg-laying organisms?
No, it's limited, it's actually for everything. It's a pretty general thing. I'm just showing you.
Okay. Even like for sharks, because I'm really curious, like, would this fall like the great whites and everything?
Probably. I can't remember, do great whites have internal gestation? They don't lay, they're not laying eggs. They have, the babies are swimming around inside the moms.
Yeah. That applies to mammals too and everything.
Yeah, right, yeah. So the more you reproduce in one year, commonly, and it doesn't always, it's not a law of nature, but commonly it means that the lower your survival is going to be. Okay. Here's an example of this working. This is the tree swallows. They build nests like this. Male and female here. They both participate in parental care. Okay, they build the nest. Okay. If a tree swallow is successful and maybe successful early, they can produce a brood of offspring. That's the first set of eggs that they lay and that hatch out and they feed and then they produce independent young. Okay, and then they can produce a double brood, a second brood after that. So they reproduce twice in a year. What we're looking at here is the survival of males and females. And it's broken down by whether or not they produce a single brood, okay, or a double brood. So when males are engaged in parental care and they produce a single brood only, their survival is about 50%, and that's about the same as it is for females. And that's actually about the same as it is for birds in general. That's about 50% survival annual. If they're lucky, the males can produce a second brood, help produce a second brood, and it doesn't really change their survival, but it really affects the survival of the females. Instead of 50%, it's down to 25%. It reduces their survival by half. The cost of reproduction for males is not the same as the cost of reproduction for females in this case. And it could be, it's likely to be, due to the fact that it costs a lot to produce those big yolk-filled eggs for females. And they don't have enough stored reserves to make it through into the next year. So there may very well be conflicts of interest between males and females in what they want to do, between parents. Does that make some sense? Now, let's see. It turns out that there's this really interesting relationship here between, it's not really a mating system, but it's like how eggs are fertilized and whether or not one sex or the other engages in parental care. Okay. So this is for fish and for amphibians, and there are species that have internal fertilization and external fertilization. External fertilization, like we saw with the bluegill sunfish, where the female deposits eggs and the male deposits sperm on those eggs. External fertilization. But there's also species like guppies that have internal fertilization, where female develops the eggs and male has a modified fin that he inserts into the female and deposits sperm. Okay. And then the females grow those eggs for a while before they lay them, or maybe they develop them until the eggs hatch, in which case, they give birth to baby fish. Okay. So that's internal fertilization. This also happens in amphibians. You have frogs, like bullfrogs, where females lay eggs and males deposit sperm on the eggs. And you have other frogs that have developed a sort of intromittent organ that they insert in the female and they improve. There is a really kind of interesting relationship between how male parental care and female parental care are distributed among those individuals that have internal versus external fertilization. So, let's take a look at fish. There are plenty of species that don't have parental care. But there are also a lot of species that have care by one sex or the other. Okay? And in fish, it's actually pretty common that males engage in parental care. We saw that with the bluegills. It is very likely that if there's male parental care, that fertilization is external. Okay? Very few cases of internal fertilization being associated with male parental care. On the other hand, if you've got internal fertilization of female parental care, it's much more likely that you're going to have internal fertilization. And this is particularly true here in amphibians, where the majority of species that have female parental care also have internal fertilization. Okay, and external, male parental care is associated with external fertilization. Okay. Why? The thought here is that a male or a female who deposits eggs and then a male who deposits sperm on those eggs knows that he's fertilizing those eggs. Okay, but we know that he's not right 100% of the time because of like the sneaker strategies in bluegill sunfish. Okay. But he actually does have some sort of like recognition that there is a egg that he is fertilizing. If he deposits sperm into a female, he has no idea really whether or not he is going to be the father of those young that develop from that female. Okay. And so the idea here is that there's perhaps an association between individuals who have greater certainty of paternity and parental care. Okay. When a female, produces eggs and she lays those eggs or gives birth to those young, she's pretty much certain that those are her offspring. Okay. Female parental care is much more logical. Okay. If a male is depositing sperm on two eggs in external fertilization, he has a much greater chance of, with some sort of certainty that he is the father of those offspring. Yeah.
But for like the external, doesn't the female know her eggs?
Yes, but some other females could also deposit eggs in there as well. So if she just deposits them externally, then, and you do have cases where females who have external fertilization engage in parental care. But it's also possible that you could have piles of eggs. And in the case of a lot of external fertilization, nobody cares about the offspring. Yeah. We saw earlier, if you think back to when we were talking about monogamy, that there was a relationship between how much the males made a difference in parental care and how much extra pair copulations there were. Okay, if the males, there's a lot of extra pair copulations, they really don't apparently engage too much in parental care, and then they don't really make much difference. So, for example, in those bird situations, we saw that there was a relationship between how certain, you could argue that it sort of looks like this, that the males are not very certain that they're the parents, they're not going to engage in parental care, and therefore not make much difference to the survival of the young. Now, let's switch to these guys. These are a drab little bird called the dunnock. European bird that has been well studied It's one of those polygynandrous things that I was talking about. And it's been studied for like decades. It's one little population of birds. And this is, the females set up territories and they guard them against other females, and they build the nest, lay eggs, and so on. Yes. Males set up territories, okay, mate with females, and so on. And the territories change from year to year, and this is just looking at one particular year map of where the territories are. So let's look at a few of these. So here is one female territory, okay, and it matches this male territory pretty much exactly. It's monogamous. This is a monogamous female male pair. Here's another one. Okay. Here's the male territory that overlaps two female territories. So one male, two females. This is polygyny. Mild polygyny, but it's polygyny. One male, two females. Here's another one male, two females. Here's another case. There's a female territory, and it overlaps two male territories. Polyandry. In this case, this female is polyandrous. Inevitably, when there are two males that are associated in the same territory, one is behaviorally dominant to the other, and so they're labeled alpha and beta. Okay. So you have here you've got in the case of polyandry. Maybe this is a case of polyandry as well. Here, these are two males. Here's a case where there's two females overlapping two males. So this is polygynandry. Okay. So far, Dunnics are doing everything: monogamy, polygyny, polyandry, and polygynandry. This is a 2 and 2. Here's a 2 and 3. There's two males and overlapping three females. Okay. There are other kind of more exotic things, like this one here. There's two females, and they're overlapping an alpha male territory here, an alpha male territory here, and a beta male territory that kind of extends over both of them. So, what's that? There is, however, you can see a lot of variability in terms of, the possibility for parental care. Over here you've got one male and one female. So this female has basically exclusive access to the parental care of one male. Okay. This female has access to parental care by two males. Okay. So this, I don't know, I guess the offspring in these nests might have three parents, one mom and two dads. In a situation where, let's see, here you've got a male with two females. It depends on how that male splits his activities. He might, split it up 50-50. He might give all of his parental care to one female, and that means that the other female has 0 males parental care. So there's a lot of variability in terms of the amount of parental care that one of these nests of the Dunnics receives. Okay?
So we don't say that some offspring may have more maternal care than maternal care? Would that be accurate?
It could be. Like this. So this shows that it does make a difference how many parents they have. This is the number of young that are hatched, so female lays eggs, a certain number are hatched. But then this is the number that actually are successfully reared. And that involves parental care, probably by males, some of it by males at least, to raise young out of the nest. This is fledged. Okay. If there's no male help, okay, she lays one egg hatches, that has about 80% chance of being successfully fledged. But that's also true if she lays two young hatch, 3 or 4. The lack of any male help, it shows up very strongly here. She isn't very productive. But if she has one male full-time help, her productivity, and actually his productivity also goes up. So that by the time they maybe 5 young have hatched, 3 of them have successfully left the nest. In the cases where it's a polyandrous situation that has 2 males delivering full-time help, it's even better. Okay. 5 young hatched, 4.7 or something like that survive. The male parental care is making a difference. Okay. Did that answer your question? So, the reproductive success is a function of parental care. Okay. But, also parental care is now a function of what kind of a breeding system they have. Probably some sort of polygamy, here where males not delivering any help, some sort of monogamy, and some sort of polyandry. So polyandry is, in this case, very, very good for the female. At this point, I'm going to stop because the situation is now getting very, very interesting.